And now let us do the loving kindness meditation, which is very beneficial, as you know. Because there are positive thoughts, which gives positive feelings. So just say in your mind, may I be well, happy, and peaceful. May I be free from fear, conflict, and delusion. May I be free from fear, conflict, and delusion. May my family and friends be well, happy, and peaceful. May they be free from fear, conflict, and delusion. May my co-workers be well, happy, and peaceful. May they be free from fear, conflict, and delusion. May all beings be well, happy, and peaceful. May all beings be free from fear, conflict, and delusion. And if you wish, you can rub your palms together. And just gently massage your eyes, your forehead. And just be aware of the sensation of the touch. Touch sensation in the present moment. Yes, we mentioned last week that whenever we're suffering from guilt, that the practice of loving kindness is very beneficial. Because guilt is an aspect of fear. And many people suffer from guilt because of our judgmental mind. We are conditioned with this judgmental mind, to criticize and so on. And so when we make mistakes, we have very negative thoughts. We judge ourselves, and we create a negative image of ourselves. I'm so bad, I'm so stupid, I'm so crazy. Why did I do that? Why did I say that? I should have done this, I should have said that, etc., etc. So it creates fear, conflict in the mind, creating a negative image and, of course, negative thoughts. So with loving kindness, we replace those negative judgmental thoughts with kind, positive thoughts. So that's one of the great benefits of loving kindness. And of course, any fear that we experience. And I'll just do this short reading again. The world is in an anxious, fearful, frustrated, and confused state. The politicians and news media people are also anxious, fearful, and confused. The mind changes from liking to disliking, from craving to aversion, from anxiety to frustration, with the agitation, the restlessness of the world. If we can learn to make the mind still, calm, and silent, it will be the greatest help to the world. And we also mentioned last week that there are some things that we cannot control. And of course, a good example is the current pandemic. But what we can control is how we manage our mental, emotional states, and how we respond to the situation, and how the benefits of mindfulness can help us to stay calm, to stay patient and positive, and how mindfulness gives us a more stable base from which we can operate, how we can deal with the situation, when wisdom and compassion can operate like this. Now, when we don't understand fear, the nature of fear, then we will never know what it's like to be fearless, to be without fear. And as you know, fear is a universal problem in human consciousness. So fear is always a good topic to discuss, because we can all relate to fear as human beings. Now, basically, there are two kinds of fear. There is physical fear, and there's mental, psychological fear. Now, physical fear is a rational response to physical danger, physical threat. And it's just an intuitive response. So it's easy to understand. And as you know, animals, birds, and so on have this natural fear. But human beings suffer more from mental fear, because we think, we have this psychological process. And a good way of looking at mental psychological fear is to use the model of a tree, where all the different branches are the different kinds of mental psychological fears. And then we have the connecting trunk of the tree. And that is the connecting factors of fear. And there are three factors that connect all our mental psychological fears. And then we have the root of the tree, the root of fear. So I'll just go over just all the different types of mental psychological fears that we experience as human beings. For example, there's a fear of not being successful, the fear of not achieving, the fear of not getting what we desire, what we want, the fear of not achieving our goals or plans, and so on. We can all relate to that. There's a fear of not being loved and accepted. And of course, always wanting approval of others. There's the fear of change, the fear of the unknown, the future, of course, and uncertainty. And this is one of the major fears that we experience during the current pandemic. Not only the fear of the virus, the unknown, this new novel virus, but uncertainty. And of course, there's a fear of sickness, aging, and death. And death, of course, is the great unknown. Later we'll be exploring the unknown, the fear of death and the unknown, and why human beings, out of this fear, have created many beliefs in an afterlife. It's very interesting. I find the subject very fascinating because of this fear of the unknown. And I call it the age-old question that humans have been asking for thousands and thousands of years. And they're asking the same question today, and in future, they'll be asking the same question. And this question is, what happens to me when I die, and where do I go after death? It's a fascinating topic. So later we'll explore. Perhaps next week we'll explore that. There's also the fear of loss. Fear of loss. You know, losing loved ones, close friends, losing material possessions, losing your job, and so losing your health, and so on. In some cases, losing your reputation if you have some high reputation in the society, and so on. There's also the fear of blame, criticism. You can call it the fear of public opinion. There's also the fear of pain, whether it's physical pain or emotional pain. And in some cultures, there's a fear of ghosts and spirits. Fear of ghosts and spirits. And there's also the fear of authority. And interestingly, the fear of ghosts and spirits and the fears of authority, they're connected somehow. Very interesting. And for some monastics or some very keen Dharma practitioners, there's the fear of not achieving enlightenment. The fear of not becoming, an arahant or a Buddha or a bodhisattva, or whatever you'd like to achieve in your spiritual path. The fear of not having liberation. In India, there's a very ancient word called moksha, which means liberation. So I think those are the main fears that we have. And of course, we do have fears like, claustrophobia, right? The fear of enclosed space. And the opposite of claustrophobia is the fear of open space. It's a very rare condition, but there are some people, I know in North America, there are a few people who have this fear. It's called agoraphobia. So they spend most of their lives indoors. They're afraid to go outside, even for shopping. And of course, you have a lot of these fears, like the fear of spiders and mice and rats, fear of snakes, fear of lizards. There's some people that are afraid of birds or the bird feathers for some reason. And for some people, it's animal fur, any type of fur. And these fears tend to be to have started in childhood. Some of these fears. Now, the fear of not being successful, not achieving your goals, not getting what you desire, and so on. I think it has two sources, and I think one of it has to do with family pressure. You know, your parents have very high expectations of you, and of course, some parents do not know what we unconditional love. So you have this fear that we'll love you, we'll accept you, but only if you become something, you achieve this, and so on. To make us proud. Some parents are caught in that ignorance, I call it. And another source of this fear is the habit of comparison. When you compare yourself with others, especially very successful people. It could be a family member, it can be a friend, it can be a relative, a neighbor, anyone. When you compare yourself, you have this anxiety. You have to prove yourself. And this is why the habit of, or conditioned habit of comparing oneself, it's very unhealthy. Because it breeds conflict. It makes us feel inferior, inferiority complex. I'm not as good as that person. I'm not as successful. I'm not as smart. I'm not as outgoing and popular, and so on. So that creates conflict in the mind, the anxiety that you have to prove yourself, that you have to be as successful as the other person. Now, the fear of change comes from not only attachment, you're clinging to some situation or something or someone. And we don't realize that life is based on change. Because we are actually a process of body and mind, and everything is a process, including all the mental, emotional states we experience. It's like all our thoughts begin to realize everything is constantly changing because we're this process. And we're alive because we're a process. But we tend to overlook this fact that we're this process. Because we're social creatures, and we use names, we use labels to communicate. I, you, he, she, and so on. So we tend to see ourselves and others as personalities, as egos, ego self-personalities, because we're caught in our human or social world, social convention. But when we apply mindfulness to the present moment, we can come to that the reality of body and mind. And we mentioned this last week. When you're very mindful, you can see that really there's only body and mind. But out of ignorance, and of course we're caught in our conditioned habits, we cling, we easily become attached to things, and we forget the truth of change, of process. And so we become afraid of change. And that comes from becoming too attached to a situation or to people and to material things. And that's also a part of the fear of loss. And we said earlier, there's the fear of the unknown, the fear of uncertainty. We also have the fear of not being loved and accepted. And so we tend to seek approval from others. There's an insecurity. And again, I think this comes from childhood, the way we've been raised by our parents. And having, a very judgmental atmosphere where people are always judging each other, criticizing each other. And of course, we also judge ourselves, right? And this is why we experience guilt, because of the judgmental mind. And there's also the fear of pain. I think this fear comes from memory, from thinking and memory, because thinking is related to memory. Say you've had a very painful experience, physical painful experience. So naturally, when you remember that experience, you don't want that painful experience to happen again. So hence, there's the fear of pain. It's related to memory. And you project that in the future. And the same with emotional pain. You've been hurt. So naturally, you don't want to be hurt again because it's too painful. Whereas, say, if you've experienced something very pleasurable and wonderful, the opposite happens. We want to repeat that pleasurable experience, don't we? Because it feels so good, it's wonderful. Whereas if something is painful, we don't want to repeat that experience. Very interesting. But it is related to memory, thinking about the past and projecting in the future. The fear of public opinion. Sometimes not only what people are saying about us, but also even what people are thinking about us. We can have this irrational fear. And as you know, you can't prevent people from talking and thinking. And again, it comes down to the image, having an image of yourself. Because that's the nature of the mind. It's always creating an image, whether it's positive or negative. Of course, it is better to have a positive image rather than a negative image. As you know, when you are experiencing guilt and so on. But even if we have a positive image, that image is still susceptible to negative reactions from people, from criticism, from aversion, from people spreading rumors, and so on. So in Dhamma practice, we learn how to understand this image, which is only created by thinking and images, of course. You know, I'm this, or I am not this, I am that. And of course, we try to protect this image. So the question is it possible not to have an image of yourself? And when we practice in the correct way, we realize it's possible. Because we see that all images, whether it's positive or negative, it is created by thinking and images. And we begin to trust in present moment awareness and the knowing, the intuitive knowing. And this is the true meaning of taking refuge in the Buddha. When we can trust this present moment, awareness and knowing. So you rest in this present moment awareness, this mindfulness. So then there's no image. Because as we said last week, awareness, mindfulness, is a state of non-duality. There's no I being aware. There's no I being mindful. There's only that energy of attention. And there's great freedom in that. And with that state of non-duality, we're able to see things more objectively. We mentioned before, including fear. We're able to see fear as just fear. Anxiety as just anxiety. Frustration as just frustration. Desire, craving as just desire, craving. Even jealousy, if jealousy should arise, you can see jealousy as just jealousy. We don't judge it, we don't criticize it. And we know these are temporary mental states. They're a part of the process. There's changing conditions of the mind. And this is what mindfulness-based psychotherapy is about. The ability to see things objectively without identifying with it, without grasping at it as something personal, and know it is impermanent. This part of the process. So when you have this trust in present moment awareness that has no center and therefore no image, naturally, there's no fear of public opinion. So people can say or think anything they like, and you just laugh at it or smile or laugh at it. But I must say though, as an aspect of maturity on the spiritual path is learning to be more open to constructive criticism. Because, you know, most of us don't like to be criticized. But there's a difference between constructive criticism and just malicious criticism. So I think we should be more open to constructive criticism. And it takes humility. It takes patience, humility, not having pride, not having ego pride. Because if we have ego pride, naturally, immediately there's fear. And you can feel it in the body. You become very defensive. But when we're more aware, more humble, then we can be open to constructive criticism. And then we can learn from it, because as you know, no one is perfect. No one is perfect. Even famous teachers are not perfect, because we're human. Now there's a fear of sickness, aging, and death, as we mentioned. Now this fear comes from our conditioned habit of identifying with the body as me and mine. We've all been conditioned like this. This is me, this is mine. And of course, we are conditioned to identify with all the conditions of this body. You know, I'm sick, I'm getting old, I'm going to die, I'm hungry, I'm tired, and so on. I'm upset, etc., etc. I'm afraid, I'm frustrated, I'm angry, and so on. And as you said before, when we look in the mirror and you see the image, we identify with that image. We think that image is who we are. And as you know, half the time we're not pleased with that image. And the interesting thing, of course, if you're very observant, you see the image is always changing. It's always changing. And some days you look in the mirror and you say, you know, today I'm okay. I'm not too bad. You know, I'll never be a fashion model, but I'm okay. But then 2 days later, you look in the mirror and you say, oh my God, I look awful. And as you said last week, when we begin to investigate and reflect, we begin to see the image, what we call the public image, you know, the image that people see, because you can't see it unless you look in the mirror, is not who you are. So one of the important teachings in the Dhamma is when we reflect on the body, we begin to understand that this body is really not me, it's not mine. Because if you reflect on the body, for example, if you tell the body not to get sick, you see that the body does not listen to us. It does not obey our wishes. The body will get sick due to certain conditions. If you tell the body not to get hungry, not to get tired, not to go to the washroom, and so on, the body does these things whether we like it or not, because it follows its own nature, including, you know, aging and death. So really, the body doesn't really belong to us, you know, a self. It's not me, it's not mine. It belongs to nature, to the changing conditions of nature. It is anatta, non-self. So this was one of the important teachings of Buddha. Of course, we have to take care of the body as best as we can. But we cannot get too attached to it because it's only a temporary shelter, you can say. And it's composed of the elements: earth, water, heat, air, and space. And while we're alive, there's also the element of consciousness. And consciousness is related to the 6 senses: seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and thinking. Thinking, imagining. And even consciousness is always changing. Later we'll do a reflection on the nature of consciousness. Very fascinating. Because when we explore the nature of consciousness, we can also understand why we have the fear of the unknown. And why we ask the age-old question. And why we have created so many different beliefs in an afterlife. It's a fascinating subject. So the Buddha said, when we have this understanding that the body really belongs to nature, then we can be at peace, can be accepting, we can be in harmony with the changes of the body, because we no longer identify with it as me or mine. So this is where the training, the mind training, and the understanding, the wisdom of non-self, so that we can be at peace with the changing conditions of nature. So even if the body is sick, the mind can be peaceful. It can be patient, it can be accepting. Likewise, when the body is experiencing aging, we can be at peace with it. Instead of being, so anxious about, ayo, I'm getting old. I need cosmetic surgery and so on. I have to keep dyeing my hair to hide the gray hair and so on. We just accept the changing conditions of the body, because it's no longer me or mine. But it takes practice, because we have this, especially in our Western societies, we have a very strong attachment to the body, and of course, their self-image. People are very obsessed about their self-image. Now, the fear of ghosts and spirits and the fears of authority. We mentioned that these two fears have something in common. And what they have in common is that they're also childhood fears. So say if you've had a very strict parent, or both parents are strict, or one is strict, that's where the fear starts, in the home environment, from having a very strict parent. And in high school, we carry that fear to, fear of the teacher. And then in some, like for example, in my elementary school, all teachers were allowed to beat the children. They had straps. And of course, the headmaster, the principal, he was the greatest fear. Now in high school, because I was brought up in the British system, teachers could not punish the students, but the headmaster could. And usually he would use a cane. That's from the British system. So the fear of authority starts in the home environment. We carry that into school. And then in the work environment, we carry that fear also, the fear of the boss, the fear of your supervisor. And in many cultures, this fear is very, very prevalent in the work environment, fear of the boss. And likewise, the fear of ghosts and spirits, it starts in childhood. And those of you who have been brought up in the Chinese culture, say in Malaysia, Singapore, Hong Kong, and these places, when you're very young, adults tell you, at night, not to go outside in the dark, because all these spirits, all these fears will, they will get you. And of course, when you're young, you have a very vivid imagination, and you imagine all these different spirits. It's a very deep-rooted conditioning. And because I grew up in the West Indies, I was brought up with African ghosts and spirits. And there are many, believe me, there are many. Because in Africa, they have a strong oral tradition of storytelling, very vivid imaginations. So I grew up with all these African ghosts and spirits. And of course, I would imagine them, at night. But later I began to realize it's just conditioning, it's just imagination, the powerful imagination. So when I'm speaking to people in Malaysia and Singapore, I like to say, because I grew up with African ghosts and spirits, I'm not afraid of the Chinese ghosts and spirits. And I try to encourage them to do the cemetery meditation. We've done a few where we can use mindfulness to observe the fear, and we can overcome this very deep-rooted fear of ghosts and spirits. But again, it's really the power of the imagination. And you can see too, this current pandemic, that a lot of the fear we have, it's really based on thinking and the power of the imagination. And the mind likes to imagine the worst case scenarios. And without mindfulness, of course, we're caught in it. People get paranoid. Some people begin to panic. And unfortunately, a lot of the fear is created by the news media and by the politicians. And I could really see the difference. I mentioned this earlier. When I came back from Perth, Western Australia, where things were very open, very relaxed, and I came back to Southern Ontario, I could really feel the difference. People here were much more fearful, much more paranoid because of the media and the politicians. And the media is the same as the American media. And it's all hype, all media hype, where they're constantly bombarding you with numbers and more numbers, and even predicting numbers also. They're even predicting numbers. And they don't realize how unhealthy this is. But they do this because it's a part of the hype, part of the ratings. That's right. Very unhealthy. And this is why the best thing you can do is to limit your exposure to the news. And I've been suggesting this all summer to people on Facebook to try and limit your exposure to the media. And I mentioned earlier too that the government in Singapore, they were much more sensible. They always gave the Singaporeans, very useful information, practical guides, and they encouraged them, to be careful, to stay calm, to stay positive.
Thank you, Bhante. There's a question from Lim Boone. I don't know whether the question will ask directly or you want me to read it.
Yes,
the question
please
says,
read it.
I understand that when we say everything is impermanent, it is not mean we stop doing anything or not hard working to do something. But I still cannot different what is the line for we have tried our best, or it is we haven't tried the best but careless, lazy, etc. For example, I have fear of losing my family members, but how to define the line that it is his or her karma? I have tried my best to protect them, or actually it is my fault, carelessness of not protecting them well. May I, you may answer the question, Bhante, for Lim Boon. Thank you.
Well, you can only try your best, right? You can only try your best. It is natural to want to protect your family. But as human beings, we also have limitations. Just try to do your best. And at the same time, use mindfulness to observe the worry, the concern in your mind. Because sometimes we get too paranoid. And sometimes when we get too anxious, we create more suffering for others, although we have good intentions. And this is why it's so important to come from a place of calmness. The practice has to be there. Because, fear is a very powerful delusion. And when you become paranoid, you begin to panic, the fear is much greater. And we tend to do irrational things. We tend to behave in a very irrational way. So as I said, keep alert, try to do your best, but equally important is to observe the state of fear in your mind and deal with it with mindfulness. Just say, there is a state of fear. It is impermanent. And you can breathe and smile. We mentioned this before. Maybe you were not here last week. It's like making friends with fear. Breathing in, I know there's fear in me. Breathing out, I smile. Breathing in, I know there's anxiety in me. Breathing out, I smile. Smile at it. And remind yourself, it is impermanent. It's a changing condition of the mind. And if you like, you can do the loving kindness. May I be well, happy, and peaceful. May my family be well, happy, and peaceful. So the practice is very important. And if you're feeling yourself getting too anxious for real, for sitting meditation, you can do some Qigong movements. And the video is on YouTube. Qigong is a form of mindfulness, and it's very simple. Just do 3 or 4 of the movements. Just go to YouTube and just type Qigong with Bhante Kovida. Chigong, Qigong with Bhante Kovida. There are 2 videos. Just follow the video, and it's very good for anxiety. When you feel some sense of panic, paranoia, and so on. But know that fear is something natural. We all experience fear, either physical fear or mental psychological fear. And mental psychological fear, we said, is really based on when we're thinking too much and you're imagining the worst. And usually what we imagine is not as bad as we think it is.
Thank you, Bhante. Actually, I'm not really attached to the fear, but it is something that I don't know to what extent I can do. Let me give an example. For example, usually this fear is on my kids. For example, I let my kids praying around my house outside. So I will have a fear that there may be any accident happen because some people driving the car or something, and then or maybe there is a bad person. So of course I need to pay attention to them, so I need to take care of them. But to what extent is considered as I have already tried my best? Maybe I feel that I try my best, but maybe others people don't think that I am trying my best. Maybe I'm still careless because of lack of some awareness, precaution or thinking. So this may make me like become in the anxiety that keep on thinking whether I have done too over or actually too protective until not in the correct way for the kids. So
Yes.
that's why I always don't know which part is the correct.
Yeah, because part of it is the fear of public opinion. Do you see that? Part of the fear is you're worried about what people will say, right? Whether it's other family members or your cousins or your neighbors. So that you have to let go of. Don't give it importance.
Because if it happens, I will feel guilty.
Again, the guilt is coming from being judgmental. You're afraid people are judging you, and at the same time you judge yourself. So that's where the guilt is. And as we said, guilt is a part of fear, isn't it? It's an aspect of fear because you create a negative image of yourself, and on top of that, we have negative thoughts. You see that? So you have to, what people are saying, you have to let go. Don't give it importance. Okay? Don't give importance. Trust in your intelligence.
Okay.
Understand?
Okay.
That's right.
Got it. Got it.
So when people, even if people want to criticize, just laugh at it. Breathe and laugh at it. Do laughing Qigong. Or I mentioned, go to YouTube and just type laughing yoga. You see groups of Indians just laughing. It's good medicine. And if you don't want to laugh, smile. Just breathe and smile at it. It's not important, but trust yourself. Trust in yourself. Trust in your common sense, in your compassion, in your mindfulness. Right? Trust in yourself. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you.
Any other questions for today's session? Or you can send us email, or we can follow up on the next session. So Bhante will be closing for today.
Okay. Just a moment. For now, you can go to YouTube. There's I mentioned last week this Bhante Kovida, benefits of mindfulness. If you did not get this last week, Bhante Kovida, benefits of mindfulness. That was recorded in Kuala Lumpur last year, and also Bhante Kovida, understanding the nature of fear. Either the nature of fear or understanding the nature of fear. You'll find it.
So we will have the second part of this session on 31st of October from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. the Canadian Eastern Time. And we also thank everyone for joining today. And we extend the warm welcome for everyone who participated today. And thank again for joining these sessions. So at the end, we will be playing the dynamic meditation one more time for those who missed it, and it will be in the YouTube. And for Bhante, is there anything else for you to say before we end the session?
Oh yes, and if you find you're having too many, disturbing thoughts, you can do that mindful chanting we did last week. Gate, gate, para, gate, parasangate, bodhi swaha. Gate, gate, para, gate, parasangate, bodhi swaha. Or just sing a song that you like. Sing a song that you like. It doesn't matter. And a part of self-care, get some exercise if you can. Do some Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga. Put some music on. Do some dancing. Just move. It's very healthy, part of self-care, just to release the frustration, the tension, the stress. It's wonderful. And if you don't like dancing, dance anyway, and you feel much better after. Or you can watch the Qigong video. So may you all be well, happy, and peaceful. Sukhi Hontu, Sukhi Hontu. And may you all be free from fear.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you very much, Bhante.
Thank you.
Okay. Welcome, most welcome.
Thank Bhante.
The unique meditation practice, or for those who are having difficulty focusing their minds from too much thinking or from sleepiness.
Welcome, welcome.
And it goes like this.
Hello. Good morning. Hello.
Thank you, Bhante.
Welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Bhante. See
welcome.
you next week.
Okay, see you next week. Sukhi Hontu.
Thank you, Bhante. Sukhi Hontu.
Enjoy your day.
Sukhi Hontu.
Sukhi Hontu, Bhante.
Yes.
Thank you. Sukhi
Thank you,
Hontu.
Bhante.
Okay. Sukhi Hontu. Sukhi
You
Hontu.
Stay
want to.
safe, Bhante.
Okay, you too. Take care. Keep smiling.
Thank you.
Keep smiling.
Thank you.